Pink Floyd's The Wall. Just how great is it? Welcome classic rock fans to an episode of Great or Sucks, and today I want to talk about Pink Floyd's The Wall. I realise I'm probably going to draw a lot of heat for this, but as The Wall is one of those kind of sacred cow type albums that you must never criticise. In order to think about The Wall, I'd like to kind of preface it with looking at sort of Pink Floyd in the 70s in general. I mean, I've gone on record to say my favourite period for Pink Floyd is the build up to Dark Side of the Moon, primarily Atom Heart Mother, which is now my love, Medal, obscured by clouds to some extent, although it's a soundtrack, isn't it, generally, to the brilliance that is Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Moon is their conceptual masterpiece as far as I'm concerned, with its ticking clocks, voices and ka-chinging cash registers that continue to chime long after that final heartbeat has resonated. And that album, unlike any other, seems to continuously evolve and take on new and surprising forms as each generation becomes captivated by its uncompromising portrayal of the permanent truth of things. A remarkable album that deals with the kind of existential traumas of life and having to deal with the choices that we all have to make as human beings, served, of course, under that wonderful metaphor, the dark side of the moon, which seems to me represents the polarity of sort of human nature. I think, as Paul Simon brilliantly said on his Hearts and Bones album, if you want to write a song about the heart, think about the moon before you start. Of course, what's interesting about Dark Side of the Moon is that all the band members have gone on record to say that they were all pulling together creatively to do justice to this wonderful conceptual idea by Roger Waters. They were all sort of had one singular purpose, and that was to make this the best thing that it could possibly be. Roger Waters has said that everything before Dark Side of the Moon, Medal, Atom Heart Mother, were kind of us serving our apprenticeship period before we delivered the finished article, so to speak, in the album Dark Side of the Moon. But in many ways, the success of that album felt like a kind of a millstone around their neck to some extent. And that is, they once had achieved that stratospheric success, the question was, what did they do next? And all the band members, including Gilmour, have said that there was an increasing sense of alienation that sort of crept in after that. In fact, there's a wonderful essay, in this wonderful book, Pink Floyd and Philosophy, there's a wonderful essay on Wish You Were Here, But You Aren't. I can't remember who wrote it. But this whole idea of alienation becomes a central theme for Wish You Were Here that is effectively explored, as well as the sort of dubious machinations of the music industry. And of course, Sid looms large over this album in the brilliant and dazzling metaphor of the crazy diamond. Nevertheless, they produce a landmark and, I have to say, brilliant album. Then, of course, we get Animals, that wonderful dystopian Orwellian beast fable. I love the idea behind this record, and I think it's some of Gilmour's finest guitar work is on this record. But it was always viewed as a kind of a lost album, and what I mean by that is it was sort of eclipsed by Dark Side of the Moon, yet overshadowed by The Wall as well. So it tended to get lost a little bit. But in many respects, I think I prefer it perhaps to Wish You Were Here. But although they're both brilliant albums. But nevertheless, it's an album, of course, the band are beginning to fragment. Waters is assuming overall control, overall dominance over everything, I think. He would argue that he felt he had to keep things moving. And there's no doubt about it, Roger Waters is the conceptual genius behind Pink Floyd, especially their 70s, classic 70s period. But without the grace and the warmth and the musical orthodoxy that David Gilmour brings, it just would not be the same for me. It just wouldn't be Pink Floyd, and that's not to underplay the contribution that Richard Wright and Nick Mason make as well. I love Richard Wright's playing, and his which sometimes seems very fragile and delicate, but serves the music perfectly. Now, The Wall is that album that kind of threw open the doors to some great music for me. I owe it a debt of gratitude in many respects. When it came out, 79, I must have been about 10, listening to my mother's 7-inch singles on one of those sort of stacked record players. I don't know if you remember them. Songs like records like Buddy Holly, Dusty Springfield, The Searchers, and other things as well. I think there was a Lulu record there as well. But The Wall, I'd never heard anything like it. It just blew me away. And I played it to death for a long, long time. But of course, eventually what that does is you start to then think about, well, what else has this band done? And of course, then you start to explore the back catalogue. And then not only do you start to explore the back catalogue of a specific band, you start to sort of branch outwards and sort of listen to music kind of around that area and of music made by their contemporaries. I started listening to Yes, Genesis, Hawkwind, Gentle Giant, all sorts of things. So in many ways, the Wall really is that that kind of catalyst that got me into the progressive rock or good music in general. However, that being said, there are certain things that don't chime well with me with this album. It's an album that I never play anymore. So I wrote, in order to do this, I thought I'd jot down some of the things I really liked about this album. So side 1 and side 2 are, I think, incredibly good. Some absolutely brilliant songwriting and execution. Gilmour's voice and guitar playing brings a much needed warmth, and as I said before, kind of musical orthodoxy to those two sides of that album. I think the songs are tighter, more contained, and subsequently have an unprecedented beauty and intensity to them. I mean, songs like Goodbye Blue Sky and Another Brick in the Wall, In the Flesh, of course originally known as The Show, On Thin Ice, songs like that. It's and then that wonderful Brick in the Wall riff that kind of serves as a musical motif that sort of runs throughout the album. I remember Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 being number 1 in the charts here in the UK when I was at school. So the things I don't like about this album, first of all, it doesn't for me feel like a Pink Floyd album. It feels more like a Roger Waters album. The band were presented with two ideas initially, to which one they wanted to go with, The Wall or Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. They chose The Wall, which I think was the better choice. The band weren't really functioning as a band. Some of them were there in sort of name only. It was mainly Roger Waters and Bob Ezrin, I think, who were the leading lights on this one. Of course, Gilmour did contribute some of the tracks and music and structures to it, without a doubt. Comfortably Numb being one of them. But so for me, it doesn't have the feel of a Pink Floyd album. There's something quite soulless about it. For starters, that's one thing that jars with me when I listen to it, especially in comparison to their other 70s output. The other thing I don't like about the album is what I call the topographic paradigm, really, which is albums that don't really fit comfortably into being a single or double album. I make that reference to Yes's Topographic Oceans. Rick Wakeman famously said that Topographic is a great single album, but not a great double album. Double album is kind of giving them enough rope to hang themselves with, and they just become sprawling and lose that kind of spark of brilliance in many respects. Now, The Wall, as I've said, I love side 1 and 2. Side 3 is patchy for me in many respects. I think Comfortably Numb is a incredibly good song, awesome song that ends side 3, and Hey You is a great song that starts it. And then we get to side 4, of course. Now, by the time we get to side 4, we really begin to feel the influence of Bob Ezrin, especially with the orchestral arrangements, with the whole idea of the trial, which I don't like, really. I don't like any... It's almost as if they were trying to think how they could desperately finish this or round it up. But anyway, with side 4, I mean, of course, Run Like Hell is absolutely brilliant, I think, and it's still a live favourite. There's a lot on there that I don't particularly like. I don't care much for Waiting for the Worms, which sounds like a night after a dodgy kebab, really. And the trial, I've sort of switched off by the time we get. I mean, I begin to switch off on side 3, to be honest with you, but side 4 I never listened to anymore. I haven't listened to for probably about 30 years, I think. And of course, Richard Wright was sacked during the making of this album. It's those sort of tensions that sort of underlie the music for me. I also feel that in many respects, a point that David Gilmour has made, that Waters would always privilege lyrics and concept over anything else, failing to recognise actually that it's a combined package of well-defined, beautiful, graceful music as well as a brilliant concept and lyrics as well, which we certainly got with Dark Side of the Moon. And of course, famously, Hypnosis didn't do the sleeve for it. Not that that's a criticism, really, it's a minor point, because Roger Waters had fallen out with Storm. So as this video is called Great or Sucks, the question is, where does this album fit on that scale? Well, clearly it doesn't suck, because it's got some moments of absolute brilliance on it. But to me, I don't consider it a masterpiece either. I don't think it's as good as Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, or Animals. But that's just my opinion. So what do you think about this album? How would you rank it? Where would you rate it on that scale? First, do you think it's a great album? It's a masterpiece, and how does it compare to the other albums that they did in the 1970s? What do you think? I'm interested in your opinion on this. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please click like and subscribe. Check out the Facebook page. But more importantly, please do keep listening.